category of union. It is not included in the direct perception of the self-nature of union apart from consciousness, because it too arises from the convergence of fictitious dharmas, like substance, etc. Therefore the categories of substance, etc., held by the Vaisesikas, are mere speculations based on false notions.
4. The Great Lord, etc. According to one doctrine, there is a great, self-existent deity whose substance is real and who is all-pervading, eternal, and the producer of all dharmas. This doctrine is unreasonable. If something produces something, it is not eternal, the non-eternal is not all-pervading, and what is not all-pervading is not real. If the deity's substance is all-pervading and eternal, it must contain all powers and be able to produce all dharmas everywhere, at all times, and simultaneously. If he produces dharmas when a desire arises, or according to conditions, this contradicts the doctrine of a single cause. Or else, desires and conditions would arise spontaneously, since the cause, i.e., the deity, is eternal. Other doctrines claim that there is a great Brahma, a time, a space, a starting point, a nature, an ether, a self, etc., that is eternal and really exists, is endowed with all powers, and is able to produce all dharmas. We refute all these in the same way we did the concept of a great Lord.
There are those, Mimamsakas, who hold the opinion that the sound of the Vedas is eternal. Its power acts as an unchanging quantity that reveals all dharmas. Another opinion holds that all sounds are eternal and are revealed in dependence on conditions. Neither opinion is reasonable. Why? Since it is granted that the sound of the Vedas can express, then it must not be eternal, like any other sound. The other sounds, of the second view, are also not the substance of eternal sounds, because, like pots or clothing, they require a number of conditions to exist. There is an opinion, by the Lokayatikas, that the atoms of earth, water, fire, and wind are real and eternal. These give rise to gross forms. The gross forms thus produced do not exceed the quantity of the cause, and, though not eternal, their substance nevertheless really exists. This opinion is also unreasonable. If the atoms they cling to have parts, like a column of ants, then the substance is not eternal. If they do not have parts, like mind and mental activities, then they are unable to produce gross matter through aggregation. Also, since they produce a result, being like what they produce, how can it be granted that atoms are eternal?
Also, the result that is created does not exceed the quantity of the cause. Thus it must be like atoms and not called gross form, and consequently the created form must not be graspable by material organs such as eyes, etc. This contradicts their own tenet. If they claim that the resulting form combines with quantity and thus resembles gross form, though it is actually not, and in this way can be perceived, then this resulting form that they cling to must be coextensive with the cause and, like atoms, uncombined with the quality of quantity. Or else, the atoms must be united with the quantity of grossness, like gross forms, because there must be no distinction of location. If it is claimed that the result pervades its own cause and, because the cause is not single, the result may be called gross, then the substance of this result also must not be single, just as the causes in which it resides are not single, because the location of each must be different. In this case, the result would not even be gross. Consequently, it would not be sensed by a physical organ. If the result combines many parts and forms a gross effect, then the many causal atoms must not be subtle and fine, sufficient to form the object of a sense organ, so of what use would such a result be? Since the result is formed of multiple parts, it must not be eternal, and therefore your former and latter opinions are self-contradictory.
Moreover, both causes and results are impenetrable as masses and cannot occupy the same place, just as two atoms cannot. If it is claimed that the substances of both the cause and the result accept each other and interpenetrate, like sand accepting water and drugs penetrating molten copper, who says that sand and molten copper accept water and drugs? If this were to occur, the atoms would separate and alter, and thus they would be neither eternal nor unitary. Also, if the substance of the resulting gross form is unitary, then when you perceive one part, you must perceive all parts, because all parts would be the same. If you do not agree, then your reasoning is faulty. If you do agree, then you contradict fact. Hence this opinion ends in dilemma and goes nowhere. It is mere vain speculation arising from delusion. However, though there are many theories of actual dharmas among non-Buddhists, they all come down to four types. The first, that of the Samkhyas and others, holds that actual dharmas and the nature of existence, etc., are identical. This theory is unreasonable. Why? Because it must not be that all dharmas are the same as existence, for all would be like existence, without any distinction of substance. This contradicts the theory that the three qualities, sattva, etc., self, amen, etc., are all different in substance. It also contradicts the empirical distinction among dharmas. Also, if colors, etc., are identical with the nature of color, then there must be no distinction such as green, yellow, etc.
The second theory, that of the Vaisesikas, is that actual dharmas and the nature of existence, etc., are definitely different in substance. This is unreasonable. Why? Because it must not be that all dharmas are not identical with existence. Like something ruined and non-existent, their substance would be undetectable. This contradicts the Vaisesika theory that the substance of actual things is not non-existent. Moreover, it contradicts the empirical fact that objects exist. Also, if colors, etc., are not identical with the nature of colors, etc., then, like sounds, etc., they would not be objects of sight, etc. According to the third theory, that of the Jains, actual dharmas and the nature of existence are both identical and different. This is unreasonable. Why? Because the error of both identity and difference is the same as previous errors of each side respectively. Also, the two characteristics are mutually contradictory, because they differ in substance, and neither identity nor difference could be established if their substance were identical. It must not be that all dharmas are of the same identical substance. On the other hand, it may well be that such distinctions as identity and difference are fictions rather than realities, although they are grasped as real. This principle is definitely not established.
The fourth theory, that of the Ajivikas, etc., holds that existing dharmas are neither the same as, nor different from, the nature of existence, etc. This doctrine is unreasonable. Why? Because the doctrine of neither identity nor difference is similar to the foregoing doctrine of both identity and difference. Does the statement neither identical nor different deny or affirm? If it just affirms, then it ought not to negate both possibilities. If it just denies, then it has nothing to say. Also, if it both affirms and denies, then the two sides cancel each other, and if it neither affirms nor denies, this is frivolous talk. This doctrine of neither identity nor difference also contradicts ordinary understanding that there are things that are identical or different, and it contradicts the Ajivika's own tenet that real dharmas such as forms really do exist. Therefore this doctrine is merely a device to avoid problems, and the wise do not accept it.
Other schools of Buddhism maintain that there are such really existing dharmas as form that are external to consciousness. Why do we deny this? Because form, dharmas unassociated with mind, and unconditioned dharmas grasped by these schools do not really exist. The form grasped by these schools falls into two groups, those that are resistant and composed of atoms, and those that are not resistant and are not composed of atoms. Resistant forms definitely do not really exist, because the atoms of which they are composed do not really exist. If atoms are mutually resistant, then they are fictions, not realities, like pots, etc. If they are not mutually resistant, they are like non-forms, and hence they could not gather together to form pots, clothing, etc. Also, if atoms have extension, they must be divisible and not real. If they are unextended, then, since they are like non-forms, how can they combine and receive light or cast shadows? When the sun rises and illuminates something like a pillar, the east side and the west side are illuminated and shaded respectively. Since the side that receives light and the side that is shaded are not identical, the atoms are established as being extended. Also, when you see or touch something such as a wall, you can only see one side and not the other. Since the wall and the atoms are identical, the atoms must be extended. Also, wherever there are atoms, they must have such differences as being above or below, or in one of the four directions. If this is not so,